We're almost at the halfway point of the season. It's been an up and down one, a little bit frustrating. We'll talk about what the Guardians need to do to be contenders if they're not already with our pal Chico on today's Lockdown Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into another episode of Lockdown Guardians. The Guardians might have been off yesterday, but we don't take days off here on Lockdown Guardians. It is our favorite half hour of the day because we're talking Cleveland Guardians baseball, and we do it 5 days a week as part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day. And joining me today, I'm Justin Lada, one of your co-hosts, and I have been writing about the Guardians minor league system since 2007, providing prospect analysis, scouting reports, and joining me today is my pal Chico. We're going to talk contenders, pretenders, trades, and prospects, all things fun on an off-day edition of Lockdown Guardians. Thanks for joining me, Chico.
Glad to be here, and of course, no days off for you. That nickname, that grinder nickname, as Wedgie would have loved for you if he was here. You get that by not taking the days off. So yeah, you've got to keep that. You've got a reputation now to uphold with that very very nice nickname.
I'm no Mike Rouse. There are people out there who will get that joke. I am no Mike Rouse, but I do try to grind at this every single day. On today's show, we will talk about there are no regrets for Travis Bazzana. We are going to get away from that talk today. No regrets for Travis Bazzana. We'll talk prospects. We'll talk Chase DeLauter and call-ups and all that good stuff. I know Chico wants to talk trades to fix how we're going to fix this team if trades are even possible. But the first thing I want to get into today, Chico, is if this team is a contender or not, because I feel like the starting pitching, it's young. I said this on yesterday's show, and I know everyone's been talking about it. The pitching has been really good, and that's been the hallmark of this team for the last decade, is starting pitching. And I know the offense is frustrating as heck, and you got to score runs to win. But if you don't have that kind of offense and you're hoping to inject some life in it, whether it's a trade, whether it's a call-up, whatever it is, starting pitching is going to get you there. And I want to say better starting pitching would have gotten this team farther a year ago, but you only had Tanner Bibee, and then, Ben Lively wasn't really the guy in the playoffs. It was Matthew Boyd. But this rotation's been as good as it's been in quite some time. And because they're young, I do have some concerns about the consistency because not all of the pitchers have been consistent this year, but the makings are there for a really strong October contender. They just got to find the pieces to get there, and I think they just got to hang around to get there, and they can make some noise. But it's frustrating in the meantime. I don't know if they can climb back and win this division, but all you got to do is get in. I know everybody wants to improve upon what you did a year ago, but you got to get in there first, and you got to battle through the hard times.
I don't think when we're talking about October and we talk about, contenders, I think we need to probably lay out, do I think this team is a World Series contender? Well, we saw last year just in that playoff run against the Yankees. You just you ran out of gas, and you had, and really they overachieved. And when you get that deep in October, and this is not I'm not getting on a soapbox here with the teams with money, but the reality is these teams are so deep. And that plays a huge role when it comes to winning a championship. So, when we say contender, I'll pose that to you. When you say contender, do you mean could they possibly represent the AL? I granted that would mean they get to the World Series, and anything can happen, I guess. But in your mind, what would you say a Guardians contender looks like?
I think it's just getting in the playoffs, to be honest. I know everything's on the table when you get to October, and it's okay to have higher expectations. I'm not saying anybody should sit here and say, well, just winning the wild card is good enough, because they won the division a year ago, and you should act like a team that won the division a year ago that came within 3 wins of going to the World Series. I agree with that 100%. The reality is they just aren't the same team as they were a year ago. I mentioned this yesterday. David Fry is not the same hitter he was a year ago. He's still trying to figure it out. Kyle Manzardo hasn't really broken out the way we hoped this year. You didn't have Noel carrying you for a month or whatever the way he did when he came up. And there might be some pieces they can add to do that, whether it's the minor leagues or it's a trade. The bullpen isn't as good as it was a year ago, but I just feel like that starting rotation can be the foundation. Now, granted, they're going to need that consistency. They're going to need Luis Ortiz to stop having starts where, he walks the entire village, and they got to make sure that Gavin Williams gets through 6 innings every time, and Tanner Bibee continues to build off what he's doing. And Slade Ciccone is going to go through hiccups too, because this guy's been great so far, but let's not forget, he's like a handful of starts in his major league career, and he's working with a lot of new pitches that he didn't have before. So there are going to be things that they have to weave through. And, the reality is this is always going to be a young team. And I get why that frustrates people, but I just want to get there. Like, I just want to get to October and see what happens. And I know that's not everybody's goal, but our host of Locked On MLB, Sully, likes to call this thing the summer score, where he says that, your team doesn't owe you a championship every year. The team owes you a fun summer of baseball. That means playing good baseball throughout the whole summer, being in playoff contention, having a playoff race to the end of the year. And for the most part, that's what the Guardians have done over the last decade. And I still think they're going to do it this year. Do I really believe this team is going to the World Series? Right now, I can't say that. No. Right now, I can't even say for sure they're going to make the playoffs, because they got to score some more runs than they've been scoring. But I do believe this team has the pieces to be a better team, whether or not that's guys from the minors, whether or not that's trades, getting guys healthy. Ironically, they probably need a bullpen arm, I think. But I still think this team hasn't played its best baseball. I think there's players in this team that are capable of being better. It's just a matter or not if they can figure out the consistency. Maybe that's a coaching thing. Maybe it's a development thing. But yeah, there's not a lot of veterans on this team still. You're sitting here saying, well, this guy is going to get to this mark. That's what Terry Francona used to say, right? Guys find their level. A lot of these guys in this team, they don't know what their level is, because they just haven't had enough time in the majors. Your levels are what? Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan, those are your levels. Everybody else, Carlos Santana, he has his level. Everybody else, they're still trying to figure theirs out.
And with finding those levels comes that identity that, Stephen Vogt is still saying, hey, this is a team searching for that identity. First of all, I will say you and I are definitely on the same page. I don't know if that's good or bad, depending on the way you want to look at it. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think they're going to win this division. I think this Tigers team is very special. They have, for my money, and you won't get an argument out of me if somebody says Paul Skeens, but if I had one game, I'd put the big lefty and Tarek Skubal on the hill. I think he's incredible. You're seeing guys, and we saw him last year in the postseason, right? Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter, and they've got a lot of good young guys, and it's kind of flipped from a year ago. The Guardians overachieved last year. I wouldn't say that, the Tigers are overachieving this year, but they certainly, they're off to a hot start, and I don't think they're going to be going anywhere. But like you said, in nowadays in 2025 in baseball, you've got your division winners and you've got 3 wild cards, and the Guardians absolutely, positively, I agree with you, are in the hunt for that until further notice. So yeah, are they a contender? Sure they are. Do they need to fix some things? Yeah. I mean, the offense, they got to start scoring runs and it's not like we didn't know that coming in, but I got to be honest with you. I know Lane Thomas was injured for a while. I really expected a lot more out of him.
I said he's going to be an all-star.
Right. And the season is not over, and we have to remember that. But he's really got to get going. And, he started, 4 for 60 or whatever it was last year when they got him. So maybe that's coming. But, the pitching, you mentioned it, Justin. It's arrow pointing up right now, even after that, 4 and 5 road trip. I think that's something that Stephen Vogt feels good about. But contenders, yes, but they've got some work to do if they're going to make real noise come October.
All right, we're going to talk. I'm going to ask you a question coming up next about what this team has to do to be a contender and where they have to go next. We'll talk some trades. We'll talk prospects, especially Chase DeLauter and Travis Bazzana. Lots more to come on today's episode of Locked On Guardians with our pal Chico. All right, we all know, we've heard of things like Viagra, Cialis. Maybe you've tried some of them. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it is time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is the next generation prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue, kicks in fast, on average 15 minutes, and the effects can last up to 36 hours. So you can stay confident, control when the moment is right, make those relationships a lot more meaningful. And you can do it all discreetly online. It comes with board certified doctor, and all of your treatments shipped discreetly to your door. We all want to make those moments a lot better in our relationship. So head over to rougiette.com/LockedOnMLB, and you're going to use our code LockedOnMLB to get 50% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB. Use promo code LockedOnMLB for 50% off. All right, Chico, I think when it comes to the contender question is this, because we saw this is not a totally dissimilar script to 2023, unfortunately, for better or for worse. Can this team convince the front office to do something at the deadline? I think that's the real question here. We talk about contenders, whether or not they'll hang around and get a wild card spot. I think the question is, can this team convince the front office that there's a move that's out there they can make that can push this team a little bit over the edge, get them in October, and see what happens. I think the trade market's going to be really difficult this time of year or this season, because you've just got so many teams in the middle, like Cleveland, Seattle, Toronto. There's like 4 or 5 teams, 6 teams in the AL that are all battling for that wild card spot. You're 8.5 behind the Tigers, but the Twins are falling apart. The Royals are behind you a little bit. So I don't even know if it's a 2-team division race or not, but in 2023, they were like, I don't know, a game or 2 out of a playoff spot at the deadline, and they decided to trade Josh Bell and whoever they could to kind of firm up for next year. And that those fruits really haven't really borne anything because they didn't have much to trade, but they didn't convince the front office that a move could be made to help them that year coming off of ALDS run. Last year, it's an ALCS run. Do you think this team can convince the front office to make a move? And is there a move to be made that can help them that exists?
Well, I think I'll go with the second part of that first. I definitely think there is a move, if not moves, to be made. But your point is spot on. Like, last year it wasn't a question, right? I mean, they came out of the gates on fire, and they had an identity pretty much from day one. It was defense, it was bullpen, and they weren't going to make anybody think of the 27 Yankees with that offense, but they had a formula, they had an identity. This year's different. I mean, it's just, and you go back to last year, I know some of the fan base will say, oh, they'll never make a move, they don't want to trade. I think if given the right situation, last year, a guy that you're familiar with, Clemmy, they moved for Lane Thomas. And who could argue? Now, this year aside, Lane Thomas had, I thought, he really, really had a great postseason. And once he got out of that funk of 4 for 55, whatever it was, he was a great addition. Are they able to convince the front office? I don't think it'll take much for them to convince them. But now I think the next step, the next question, and I'll pose it to you, Justin, is what level are we talking about as far as adding? I mean, is it a quote unquote bigger name, Marcell Ozuna or Luis Robert, or you know what I mean? Or is this just, I don't know exactly what that means just yet.
Yeah, I don't know who the sellers are. Like, to me, that's the biggest question. I don't know who the sellers are, because I look around the standings of baseball, right? Like, you got the AL East. The only team that's out of it in the East is the Orioles, and their GM's trying to save his job because they're having a disastrous season. You're not trading talking about Luis Robert. The White Sox didn't even want to trade Eric Fetty to the Guardians last year in the division. They accepted a very strange trade to the Cardinals last year. or a 3-team deal just to not trade with the Guardians or the Twins. The Twins wanted Eric Fetty last year too. The Athletics and the Angels, they're out of it in the West, but the Athletics are their arrows going upwards. They don't have a lot of veterans to sell off. Their team's young and they're building towards the future. And the Angels, they never sell. Like, they're a team that's just so goofy. They should be trading away Taylor Wards and other guys, but they don't really have. Like, I would kill to get Reed Detmers. Jeff and I wanted Reed Detmers a year ago. I'd kill him. And I think the Guardians need a bullpen. They need a bullpen arm. Like, you don't have Andrew Walters. You don't have Sam Henches. Tim Herron hasn't been the same as he was a year ago. Maybe you'll get Eric Sabrowski back here soon, but he's rehabbing. Trevor Steffen's rehabbing, but it hasn't gone all that great, to be honest. Like, they need another bullpen arm. They need Emmanuel Clase to be a little more dominant like he was a year ago. But, like, the Nationals don't have much to trade. The Marlins have very little. There's Jesus Sanchez, who Jeff likes. Like, that's a guy. The Pirates don't want to trade, but they're a disaster. The Rockies have nothing. Like, it's a limited trade market. That's the thing that's hard for me to grapple with is, and even within the division, like Luis Robert, like, I'm sorry, I'm not trading for Luis Robert because unless you're paying pennies on the dollar to get him, because the guy's always hurt. He's had one good season in his career, and he's just never healthy. Like, what are you really getting out of him? That you're like, what, you're going to get great defense? Great defense isn't going to help this team win in October. They need a bat. Yeah, you can't steal first base like Luis. And if Luis Robert tried to steal first base, he'd get hurt doing it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And the reason I bring up, and by the way, I like the Reed Detmers one. He's a guy that kind of bounced rotation, bullpen and whatever. But I think if you could acquire someone like that to reinforce the bullpen, I like that move. I mentioned Robert because I was listening to Jim Bowden, the former general manager, and he said, you probably saw it. He said Luis Robert for, I think it was Velasquez
and Chourio.
Chourio. And now here's the other thing. You brought up an interesting point with Robert, and I'm not real keen on him either, but I'm just tossing this out there. If the Guardians were to make that move, he's under, I think he's $15 million this year, and then he's under team control with options for 20 the next two. That's a lot of money, clearly. How much would the White Sox throw? I think they would have to know they'd have to throw in some cash there. But then if they throw in cash, you know as well as I know, okay, well, all of a sudden, Chourio's nice, Velasquez is nice. Let's see if we can't get, one of those other guys too. And I just don't know. And the bottom line is, are you sold at Luis Robert? Here's the other thing. I think the Guardians have a pretty good clubhouse. I don't mean to overrate it and say like it's the end-all be-all, but they are certainly a team, and they've demonstrated this, whether it's Tito, Vogt, whoever, that sort of thing is a big deal. Now, is Luis Robert miserable because Chicago is a choke? And probably, but I do wonder, in addition to the injury concerns that you brought up, and rightfully so, is this a guy that would fit? I don't know. And that's something you want to be darn sure about, or at least feel really good about before you pull the trigger on that one.
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of faith that's going to be figured out. Like, I think if you got him, if there's any concern about his attitude or hustling or whatever, I think if you put him on a team that is a legitimate contender, I think for the most part, this team, this organization can take almost anybody. I don't want to say anybody because, we're not bringing John Rocker and we're not bringing in, TB, all these other guys. You're not bringing those guys in this clubhouse. But for the most part, I think this organization can handle just about anybody. I would rule Marcell Ozuna out for two reasons. A, because I'm getting ahead of myself. A, because he's a DH. This team doesn't have room for another DH. B, he's playing through a hip tear right now. So his injury situation is not great. He's also got a history of domestic violence too. I don't know where this team stands on that kind of thing. Like, he's been great for the Braves, but there are certain things this team won't look past. They haven't done that in quite some time. So I don't know. I really never even entertain Luis Robert because he just hasn't been good for the last 2 years. He's had one phenomenal season his entire career. The guy Luis Robert could be certainly would be the missing piece in this team, but I don't know how many more injury issues can this team take on. And this team has been burned financially when they do add dollars like that, like Mike Zunino and Josh Bell and Nick Swisher and Michael Bourne. Like every time they put money out there like that, it doesn't end well for them. Speaking of injuries and guys they put money behind, when is the right time to call up prospects? Maybe the prospects are the thing that has to happen here if trades aren't possible. We'll talk more prospects coming up next on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Boy, summer is hurting the wall for me. I can tell you that. I am checking my bank account, and I'm not wondering where all my money went because I know where it's going. I said birthday is in the month of June and July. I've got a retirement party to throw for my mom coming up here. Vacations, we're all doing it. Plus, you got online shopping. Very easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money is very important because they are your and my personal CFO. They give us full visibility and control over our finances. This is not just the other budgeting app. This is a complete financial command center. You're going to be able to track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So if you have the means to do so, you can actually build wealth, not just manage your money and see where it's going. You can actually work towards goals. It's summer, so we want to take trips, right? Maybe we're saving for some home improvement things we want to do this summer, right? You got goals with your partner, and you want to make those conversations easier financially to track shared accounts, personal accounts, stay on the same page about fights. Monarch Money is going to do that for you as well. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Well, I don't really trust the trade market, Chico. I got to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a dud of a trading deadline. I thought last year was going to be a dud of a trading deadline, to be honest with you. And I have no interest. I'm okay with trading a Ralphie Velasquez. I'm okay with trading a Jason Chourio. I'm actually going through some concerns with Jason Chourio as a prospect myself right now, just the way I've seen this year. I have a little more faith in Ralphie, but there was a lot of risk outcomes there too. I'm okay with trading one of those guys. I had no issues trading Alex Clemmy a year ago for what they did. That trade, I think, worked out phenomenal, at least for the postseason. It's not working out great now, but no matter what Alex Clemmy turns into, I don't have any regrets about that trade. I think I would have regrets about trading, Angel Hanau or some other guys like that. But the prospect, maybe the route to go is prospects. Everybody and their mother wants Chase DeLauter to be up like yesterday. I don't know. Where are you at on the Nolan Jones thing? Chase DeLauter, to me, from a talent and skill standpoint, I think the indicators to me suggest he's ready to go. I think he could play in the big leagues tomorrow. I think the weight on him right now fully comes down to build up in terms of health. Like, I think that's all it is. And I just don't know how much longer we're going to watch Nolan Jones. Like, he's been fine recently. It's not like he's blowing you away. I don't think he's done the things you required him to do. You could certainly hang on to him and do some other things, but I don't know. I think Chase DeLauter is ready. I think it's a matter of just build up for him right now. He doesn't have a lot of time in AAA, but there's not a single indicator offensively that scares me in terms of his overall talent and skill level. It's just they want to make sure he's going to be able to come up and play 4 or 5 days a week.
As far as Chase DeLauter, I don't know if I said this to you earlier when we had the podcast in April, but I said it to somebody. I was talking to I would consider somebody in the know when it comes to, different prospects and whatever. And he wasn't saying this guy was, that Chase DeLauter was going to be this guy, but he reminded him of Chipper Jones in terms of his size, athleticism. Now, again, I'm sure somebody's still going to say Chipper, what? But he's
Hall of Famer.
And Chipper even had injuries early on in his career. But, yeah, it's so tempting with DeLauter because you see it more than anybody studying him. I mean, it's clearly evident. My thing, and this is always a touchy subject, and I think it's a very fair argument that people make. But, you mentioned it. How much experience does he really have? Not a whole lot. I mean, when you start talking above rookie ball and that he doesn't have much. And
120 career games, 125, sorry.
Yeah, CJ Kayfus, same thing. But let's focus on DeLauter. I wouldn't have a problem calling him up, but I know the Guardians, and I think every team feels this way. You don't want to get in the habit of shuttling them back and forth, and because believe it or not, mentally it can wear on them. They're hitting the heck out of the ball in AAA and AA, and then all of a sudden you get up to the bigs, and it's like, whoa, and it's going to happen. They're going to struggle up there. But is DeLauter, would he be okay with that if it were to happen? Maybe he gets called up and he's just fine. But I think if they are, and this is, I'm sure fans will disagree with me on this. If they are out of it, I say absolutely bring him up and let him make mistakes, let him play every day. If they really believe that they have a chance, and again, I believe in Chase DeLauter down the road. I do. I think he, hopefully, knock on wood, finally you'll be able to plug somebody into right field and say, there's your guy. He's going to be, in the outfield, and he's going to be there for a while. I just don't know if when you talk about the pressure of, games and that's where, like last year, Lane Thomas came over. Hell, he struggled, but he was a veteran. He figured it out. A guy like Chase DeLauter, does that kind of stunt his growth a little bit? I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that because, you see these guys more than anybody out there.
I mean, it's tough for any prospect. I know the Guardians have done a lot of studies over the last 20 years about when the right time to call up prospects is and how to handle the mental side of things. I know they're big on that. And they've studied the qualitative effects on that, not just quantitative. Going back and forth certainly hurts. Jose Ramirez is going to be in Cooperstown one day, but how many people do you remember saying, why is Jose Ramirez playing shortstop? Why is he here? We should have Francisco Lindor up, right? And Jose, they're both going to be in Cooperstown together one day. But, we got to remember two things about prospects: patience. I'm not saying, you got to be you're I don't know. He's not going to fix what ails you right now, so don't bring him up because prospects fail. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying nobody wants to hear this. But the Guardians, unfortunately, because of the way they operate, they have to think about Chase DeLauter in terms of not just 2025, but 2026 and 2027 and how he can best help this team. And a lot of people want to say, well, I want to win right now. I want to win right now, too. It's been over 70 years. I've never seen a World Series winner. You've never seen a World Series winner. We all want that. I think we can agree this year is not going to be the year. I don't think we expected it was going to happen a year ago either. But, I think it's important to remember he doesn't come up. He's not the silver bullet. I don't want to wait, though, until they're out of it. I think you want to try to use him as a piece that helps you get to October, not just, okay, we're out of it. It's time to call up the prospects and see what happens. But you also have to remember, you can't expect to call up a Chase DeLauter. And I still want to see Juan Brito up, too. Juan Brito is getting close to finishing his rehab. I'd like to see him up, too, because you know what you kind of have in some of these guys right now, and you don't know what you have in DeLauter, and you do want to see him before he gets hurt again to see if he can play in the majors, but I don't know. You got to pull the trigger at the right time, and you know what? They're not falling out of the wild card race anytime soon. The division might be gone already, but you can make this move in 2 weeks. You can make this move in 3 weeks. We'll see what happens.
Justin, let me just say something real quick on DeLauter because I thought you brought up a great point that you didn't want to wait for them to they're out of it, and I can see that. I mean, thinking about it again. However, if he's going to be called up, I don't want to see him, he's going to play today. He's going to sit for 2 days. That's one of those where I want to see him get as many reps as possible. And that's always tough. I mean, that's Tito.
But you got to keep him healthy when you do it. That's the thing.
Right.
You got to manage the workload, which is why he's still in AAA. It's a workload issue. Why he's in AAA. If this guy hadn't gotten hurt, Chico, he'd already be in the majors. That's the end of it. I agree. There. He'd be in the majors already if he hadn't gotten hurt. Yep. All right, speaking of guys who've gotten hurt, we're going to get out of here on this note. I got to tell you, I am so tired of the talk online. And you can feel however you want to feel. I'm not telling fans how to feel. But here's how I feel, and I'm tired of seeing this opinion because I think it's abysmal.
I'm on the edge of my seat with this one.
Travis Bazzana is not a bust because Jack Caglione is in the majors, because Chase Burns is in the majors, because Nick Kurtz, who was my favorite prospect a year ago, is in the majors hitting tanks, okay? That doesn't mean Travis Bazzana is a bust. The first guy to get to the major leagues out of a draft class does not win the race, okay? Have we ever read the book The Tortoise and the Hare? Come on, guys. Like, just because those guys are succeeding, and Jack Caglione has not been great, by the way. Nick Kurtz has been good. We'll see what Chase Burns is made of at the Yankee Stadium on Tuesday in his debut, which, wow, that's a bold move. Good for them. Good for the Reds. And I want to see that. But Bazzana's hurt. He doesn't have an injury history, guys. Like, Chase DeLauter had an injury history. Daniel Espino was a ticking time bomb. This is not the same case. This is a fluke injury, and yes, oblique injuries linger, and they suck. And I'd rather be watching Travis Bazzana playing Columbus tomorrow, but that's not the reality. But that doesn't mean it's a bust. Guys, we're not even a year out of last year's draft. He was struggling a little bit.
People are calling him a bust?
Yes, and they're upset. They're having regret about whether or not this guy should have been the first overall pick. It's too soon. We're not even a year out. Like, yes, he would not be in Cleveland if he was healthy right now. I agree, and that frustrates some people. But people were saying the guy was struggling at Double-A, and he was still having a really solid offensive season while he was working through those things. I don't know what was going to happen yet with his tweaks of all the things he was working on, but it's not like he was, like, terrible. Like, Charlie Condon was a god-awful a year ago for Colorado's minor league team. Now, he's been better this year. I have no regrets about Travis Bazzana. Ask me in 5 years, okay? Not June 24th about last year's draft pick. This isn't the NFL. This isn't the NBA. God, even the NBA, it takes, Chico, in the NBA, it takes, how many years did it take Isaac Okoro and Darius Garland and Kyrie Irving to reach the ceiling of their potential?
How many years did it take the Denver Nuggets to win like, they didn't blow it up. It took them a while, then they broke through. Like, I promise I won't be long here with old man screaming at the sky and get off.
I did enough screaming for both of us, so go ahead.
I can't. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, and I understand, fans. I get it. I understand that. Hey, you want to win right now, and that's part of being a fan, and that's great. But you do have to have some perspective and some handle on reality. This stuff doesn't happen. It's not 2 minutes in the microwave, press start, comes out, chant. It doesn't work that way. And quite honestly, like, would I want it to work that way? Yeah, I guess. I mean, just to get but that's kind of the beauty of, seeing these guys. And if he comes quicker than some or others come quicker than he does, fine. But you nailed it. Like, talk to me in 5 years. The goal is to win the marathon. The sprint, it would be nice, but I just a bust. I can't. I didn't even know that. I mean,
just even regret. Just should he have not been the first of all pick? We can't say that on June 24th of 2025 when the draft was middle of July 2024. We can't say that. Okay, we just can't.
Trying to pick a Browns quarterback in May, but that's a whole.
Yeah, and I want to say too, like, two things can be true at once. I think we all have to remember that in this day and age. Two things can be true at once. The Guardians are very slow and probably sometimes too slow when it comes to promoting prospects and bringing guys along.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that because other guys are up, that this guy is a bust. That's not how that works. Both these things can be true at one time. So let's just remember that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. And between all the screaming and the kicking and the disappointment, we have to get to that middle somehow. All right. Jeff will be back with me tomorrow. We'll talk Guardians Blue Jays. It'll be a fun reunion because Andres Jimenez and Miles Straw and Ernie Clement and Nathan Lucas are all coming to town. We'll talk MLB draft data and strategy. We'll talk about more prospect promotions because there were some on Tuesday or Monday. So we'll get into those tomorrow with Jeff. Chico, I appreciate you being here. Can't wait to have you back on. I know we'll have you back on soon. I can't wait to hear you more wherever that pops up. All right? You stay well, my friend.
Love talking ball with the grinder. Thank you, Justin.
Yes, I would have been one of Eric Wedge's favorites, even though I detested Wedge as a high school baseball fan. All right, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, you're downloading daily. You know the drill. And in the meantime, go, Guardians, go.